It seems that everyone wants to prove their bona fides on how they want the meta to be dynamic or multipolar or anti-hegemony, etc. The rhetoric in these past few years has been sufficiently exhausted for nearly everyone who pays attention to the game. At the same time, these notions have become shallower and shallower and used increasingly as political props instead of as an actual belief and or argument. It's really sad to think that most of the proponents care much more about using as a byline in their narratives. Minispheres or any sort of similar political construction is only functional insofar as there is good faith in dealing with others, be they foe or friend, and that we respect norms set out in the meta. The whole premise is based on the fact that instead of seeking security, you should depend on ability and your FA teams to manage your position. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but the person who gets the short end of the stick is always evolving. That's been entirely the case this war, and the hypocrisy needs to be pointed out. Exhibit A, Rose Swamp Secret Treaty. This one has been confirmed to exist by these parties. This has been confirmed privately on more than one occasion. And in this case, we have a legitimate example of a secret treaty that was signed and activated by both Swamp and Rose. There's a decent bit of negative precedent behind the secret treaties. My alliance was just rolled over the supposition of having won with a paperless party, even though it was never activated. I hope the same parties who were so vigorous before on the issue are as emphatic on the situation as well. Both Rose and Swamp continue to make claims about Quack's hegemony and how they wanted to be smaller, us to be smaller. It's ridiculous to pass Quack off as a threat when you've got a larger sphere and another sphere two-thirds of the size, and Rose has the same ethereal competence as Quack, not only working together against the spirit of a multipolar world, but also tied together by a treaty. The rhetoric and narratives coming out of these spheres can't be taken as anything more than a front. Maintaining the meta is impossible if people are going to work behind the scenes to create these kinds of deals. A large part of the initial crusade against NPO and MPO's last time was because they also maintained a secret treaty with BK, parentheses SCX, and IQ never disbanded. It was also a critical reason why the only true minispheres, Chaos, wasn't viable. After that war, we were supposed to be moving on and becoming better, but people are still pulling the same kind of BS as before. These groups have walked away from that commitment. Yet these same parties want to talk about how threatened they were by the Quack and how destabilizing it was to everyone. Their arrangement was bigger and they had way more firepower than Quack could ever hope to achieve. It's very hard to see any of these gestures as having good faith at all. Exhibit B, hedge money. For all the talk about, against being hegemonies, all hedge money has ever done is join in and plan dogpiles and coalitions much larger than any other single sphere, even the one they label as a hegemony. They first rolled TCW with Swamp going in at least 3-1. Now we're in the same situation with Crack, hegemony, hedge money riding in at 3-1. They've also dogpiled Pantheon as well as bullying both Camelot and TCW into coughing up billions. At the same time, hedge money is on record saying they also agreed to a secret treaty with Swamp, ensuring that at least there'd be a coalition who outnumbered Quack 1.5-1. In reality, all three spheres given the other secret treaty. It's hard to find any sort of consistency with hedge money, especially. From day one, they made Quack out to be a hegemon and even named their block Rust, despite the fact that we were always being matched by another sphere, and their continual participation in backroom deals that made them anything but an innocent party. You can't externally push for smaller spheres to expect people to agree with you if your only action is just to roll people in unfair circle jerks. It's a bit ironic that the sphere who claims to care most about the meta has done more damage to it than anyone else. This war was always a matter of if, not when. There is always enough treaties in place and evidence provided by Sphinx leaks or third parties to make that point incontrovertible. Quack's goal as we saw it was to try to create a more fair war by keeping Rose out and later Swamp when it seemed that Rose's entry was inevitable. We spent the last 9 months since MPO's last time working on relations with both spheres, and this wasn't subtle at all to either party. We made our intentions clear. We should stop trying to pretend that this war was planned as anything but the opportunistic strike by Rose, Swamp, and hedge money. None of Quack's actions bear out the hegemony narrative, nor does any of the opposing coalition actually make good faith efforts for their claims of a dynamic Orbis. Make no mistake, behind the scenes there were concerted efforts to make this play out as it did. This came to bear in the blitz that was magically organized in minutes and the revelations coming out of the peripheries after the war began. The hypocrisy and the corruption of convictions are the problem with ever achieving a true multipolar world. For the health of the meta, it's time to drop the act and come up with a new narrative, or at least own up to the serious and damning decisions that are why we struggle to see that vision come to fruition.